also take this time to introduce you to one of my dear friends and classmates. Yeah. So this is Caro Williams Pierce. And Caro is a math educator. Caro is, and I'm not sure how many of you know this term, is an unschooler, meaning she was not raised in the K-12 system, but she was raised in her own self-created learning environment, involving a ton of self-regulated learning. Those of you who've had ed psych should be familiar with that term. Lots of interest-driven learning and having that ability to follow her passion. She came through higher education in an undergraduate college not too unlike Whitewater, and found her calling there, and then went on to get her almost PhD. She's defending her dissertation yet this year, and is one of the leading experts on innovation in math education. And those of you who are studying to become math educators, you need to have Caro in your professional network. One of the things that she's doing right now is she's pulling together a book that's a collection of educators, teacher scholars, who are pioneers in K-12 education in innovation and in bringing in not just digital media to supplement things like worksheets and things like that, but to truly innovate and create transformational learning in their classrooms. And so this book is going to be coming out in the next year, and it will be available through ETC Press, which means that it will be available for free download. So you will all have access to that moving forward. The other thing that you should just really take note of is that when I say she's putting together this book that's a collection of all these teachers, that means she knows all these people. So she can tie you to those people, she can connect you to those people. So please make sure that you take note, get her contact information down. This fall, she'll be going to University of Albany. Some people know it as SUNY Albany. She'll be an assistant professor there in a research-intensive institution where she'll be continuing her research, but also continuing in math education. So she's going to be talking to you today about some really innovative and creative ideas, and I think you're going to be absolutely amazed at the things she's going to tell you. So let's give it up for Caro.
So that's a no on the mic. So first of all, I hope the cameras didn't catch my blushing because I feel beet red right now. And I appreciate all the lovely things that Beth said. And I also want to say, Beth King has the top tier research mind that would have excelled at a place like UW-Madison, at a place like Albany. You are all incredibly fortunate to have her in your life. She is a brilliant, brilliant woman.
Woohoo!
So, sure. Everyone cover your ears.
Hello? Hello?
You have a strong voice.
Sorry.
That's good. Go ahead.
Okay. This is probably my natural speaking voice. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, now if I get really excited, then just put your hand, and get really loud, just put your hand up and be like, and I'll know what that means. Because I do tend to get really excited about my work and the time that we're living in right now. So the name of my talk is really quite ambitious. And we've done some recent rebooting, actually, because thanks to Connor, we have a PS3 set up with Little Big Planet 2, which is what I built my dissertation game in. So we can actually do some live building today, so you can see what it looks like behind the scenes as, I can ask you for a request. You can say, how about if you make a bunny rabbit explode? And I'll be like, all right, give me a minute. And then we'll have an exploding bunny rabbit. Actually, cows are easier. I know exactly where to find the cow in there. I might have to make a bunny rabbit. I'm actually not very good at making animals that actually look like they're supposed to. But you can see the Little Big Planet icon up there, and that's why. I get to use this on all of my presentations, even at the uber crazy large conferences where my future colleagues are staring at me and judging. I still get to put that up, which makes me really happy. So, how many of you are training to become teachers? Okay, awesome. How many of you already teach in some form? Okay, excellent. So I'm guessing that this is TAing, going into schools. Do we have any professors here? Nope, I think Beth had to sneak out. Hopefully nothing's on fire out there. So how many of you are designers? Okay, so I see a little hesitation, a little maybe, but most hands are down. So no, you're doing it wrong. You are a designer. This is part of your life. You are all going to be teachers. This means you are going to be designing classrooms. If you reconceptualize the way you think about classrooms as designing, it'll be much more powerful. I'm going to talk a little bit about how current teachers are designers. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you are a designer right now in your day-to-day life as an undergraduate student. Then I'm going to sort of awkwardly shift into talking about my current line of research. But I was preparing this, and I was going to talk about a bunch of different chapters from my book. And if we have time, I'm totally happy to talk about those, some of the amazing things that are happening. But I also realized that if I don't explain to you that you are a designer right here and right now, and that you can also build a game that supports people in learning fractions, then half of my talk is going to be lost on you. Everything I show you, and even all of the things that I don't have time to show you, these are all things that you can do right now as a designer. So by the end of this, I hope that you will all raise your hands and say that you're a designer. Whether or not you believe me now, I encourage you to start thinking about the world around you as if you are designing your space within it and designing who you want to be within that space. So you are a designer, and teachers are designers. So if you teach, if you work with young children in school, maybe you're doing that part of your teacher training. Or if you teach a class, or if you TA a class, will you all raise your hand? One more time. Really up. Don't be tentative. Okay, good. So everyone, nope, keep your hands up. Sorry, we're getting a workout in this one. Okay. Everybody look at those folks. Those folks right now are thinking about designing, which means those are folks that you should look at. You can all put your hands down now so that people won't stare at you awkwardly. But these are folks who are thinking about design on a regular basis right now. So today and tomorrow are days to go to those folks and ask them questions about how they design the stuff that they're doing right now. So they're designers. So you might think of folks like this and folks like Dr. King as teachers and professors. And you would absolutely be right, but that's not the whole story. So when we are students in a class, we tend to see what is as static. So it's something that's just magically set up, moves forward perfectly. It's like traffic on the interstate during a non-construction season. So you plan to get from point A to point B. You expect to get from point A to point B. And guess what? Since you're here, you did get from point A to point B. But teaching is a whole other matter, and we rarely get to see the reality behind that curtain when we're students. So I'm going to pull it back a little bit for you. So this is point A. This is where you are now. This is point B. So this is where I hope to get you as a teacher designer. So say, understanding fractions. Unfortunately, getting from point A to point B is actually really, really complicated. I want to say a quick thank you to Trennan Farms, because they're the ones that designed and built this corn maze. That's here in Wisconsin, so you should go. So as a teacher designer, I have to make sure that you visit, say, adding fractions, multiplying fractions, subtracting fractions, dividing fractions. And then it's also really important to me that you understand the differences between unit, proper, and improper fractions. Okay, but one of my design constraints is that I have a limited amount of time in my classroom. And my students are also at very different points of understanding. And it's really incredibly important to me that you understand the relationships between all of these different areas. So I have to be really creative in my design. So let's say I've designed this path from A to B. Each spot I'm going to try to draw all of those connections in. And this path is based upon what I know about fractions content knowledge. It's based on what I know about the way that students best learn fractions and what I know about my students. So designing is always about these constraints of different types, trying to achieve a goal within the constraints of your immediate reality. And so I've studied my constraints. I've studied time, material, background knowledge. I think I figured out a good plan. But as usual, when your design plans meet reality, bits go awry. This is part of the design process and part of teaching. So some of my students are completely missing a bit of understanding that's really needed, okay? So I take us on a quick field trip. We review that knowledge. And as they're doing that quick review, one of my students finds this really fascinating and inviting path and wanders off, just like I did many, many times in my educational life. So I leave my other students doing the planned fractions activities. I run after her. I explain, yes, this is really cool and exciting and interesting. And I really thought that way about fractions, and I still do. So you can substitute your favorite topic in there. And I promise her that we'll cover it someday when we have time, and then we rejoin the group. So now we're mostly on track, but we're a little behind in terms of time. So I pause for a moment, do a little formative assessment, and I try to make sure that all the students are with me. Because if they don't understand the concept, this concept, they really won't understand the next one, because I've designed this sequentially. So a little bit of assessment, but in fact, I've actually been doing assessment all along. Because if I want my path to, like my design to be really based upon student learning and student understanding, I need to constantly know where they are and where to go to figure out where to go next. So this is actually how I figured out to go on the little side path and how I figured out that one of my students had wandered off. So by the time that we're done, I've modified my original design many, many times based upon what my students understand, the content, and my other constraints. So, and this would be the map of a very experienced teacher. First-year teacher maps would probably look something like this. So design and teaching is about doing the best that you can with what you have, then seeing what didn't work, then getting better, then getting better. So there's nothing easy about design. And this is actually one of the delights of being a teacher. Since you're working with other human beings, there are constant surprises. You will never be bored as a teacher. And you may occasionally be frustrated, but you will also at other times just be elated at what is happening in your classrooms. So I've talked a little bit about constraints, and it's important to be thoughtful about those and creative when you're designing with those constraints. But what do I mean by them? So this maze actually isn't just the subject matter. It's not just what do you teach, what do you have to teach, what do you not teach. It's also how long are your classes, how many students do you have, what resources do you have and not have, how helpful are your colleagues, if there are more experienced or tenured teachers in your group, do they protect you as much as they can? Do they share tips and tricks? Do they make sure that you have enough time to do the design that you really need to do? Do they make sure that you get more study halls, perhaps, so that you can work on designing your other classes? So being a teacher is being aware of all of these constraints and the people that are within that constrained space with you and designing around them to the best of your ability. You always will have to, you don't have to, you can ask for help. One of the wonderful things about teachers is that they enjoy sharing their experience and their knowledge. So asking for help isn't an admission that you are dumb or that you haven't thought something through. Asking for help is the admission that you're thoughtful enough to realize that bullying forward without thinking may hurt children more than it helps them. And this is one of the particularly complicated pieces about being a teacher, is that you can lift them up with you or you can hold them back. And a good designer will make sure that they lift more than they hold back. So if you're not a teacher yet, you're probably thinking, okay, but you said I was a designer, but I'm not doing any of this in my classes right now. So this is your life. I'm going to use this exact same picture. So point A is where you are now. Point B is you as a master teacher many years from now. So you are designing your own learning in your immediate space. And you're also designing the learning of your fellow classmates and your teachers. So every choice that you make is designing your future. So this is also the one chance that you really get to focus on designing yourself, to be the best designer for your future students. Most of you don't have students right now. You can focus on designing yourself instead of trying to design for them. So these are some of the people and teachers you have in your life right now, and they're willing and able to act as signposts to your final destination. So it's up to you to decide which path to take and which expert teacher designers to learn from. So this is going to sound a little odd in an academic presentation, but being a human being is a strange experience. You're sort of trapped behind your own eyes and observing the world. You can't control the world around you. All you can do is react to it. And your reactions are something that you can learn from in order to make sure that the reaction that you had and the reaction that you enforced upon the others around you is part of who you want to be. I've done many things in my life that I'm ashamed of. I've done many things in my life that I'm proud of. And I've learned from all of them. And I'm going to, there's a part of me that wishes that I was still, like, I'm not really a real student anymore. I no longer take classes. My life has passed that. But there were aspects of that time that I didn't take for granted. And one of them was the fact that there were people that surrounded us, that were in the same place, having the same journey, and there was a whole group of people there to help. So, as I said, that's a little odd for an academic presentation. How many of you are mostly convinced by my argument that you're a designer or will be a designer when you're a teacher? Okay, that's lovely. And I wish that book was out, my book was out right now, because that would be very specific examples. But as I said, if we have time, then afterwards I can talk about some of the work that these teachers who have actively been like, you know what, I am a designer. Okay, what they've done, and some pretty amazing things. All right, so we're back to this title theme. So what does designing objects have to do with living in the future? Folks have been designing things for a long time. So the wheel, the ox collar, sliced bread, all of these things are important. But the opportunity to design now and then revise and learn and redesign and then share our work, this is an unprecedented time in history. I can build a game in Little Big Planet and press the button, and millions of people suddenly have access to it. I can tweet a single tweet, and millions of people can read it. So we're in a really unique, powerful time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my work in Little Big Planet. And then I think we're going to do some live building so you can see what some of that looks like. This is, oh, I kind of do want sound. Okay. So I'm going to show you a short clip of a trailer for Little Big Planet. This is for the first one. There's 3 of them out now. When you buy Little Big Planet, you get it as a game. You get to play that game. At a certain point, you unlock the tools that they used to build the games you just played so that you can build your own games. So Little Big Planet, I call it a platform. It's a platform for building games more than it is a game itself. There are like 10 million player-created levels that are out there on the PlayStation Network right now. That's the SAC person, the player's avatar. And one thing this game definitely got right is that it's thoroughly adorable. You can play up to 4 players at the same time. There we go. And one of the reasons that I picked this was because I am not a programmer. And programming is not something that you just learn in a week. Just let me tell you that. So if you decide to build your own game, if you don't already know how to program, you're going to be investing lots of time into learning how. Or you can just buy a PlayStation and Little Big Planet like I did. Kind of cheating. It also comes with its own aesthetic. So like I said, it's adorable. There are also great sounds that you can put into it. There are soundtracks and songs that you can play. So you get given a bunch of the tools that a game design studio would need to come up with from scratch. And then also, there aren't many PlayStations in classrooms. Like, if you have a classroom of, say, 40 kids, and you wanted them all to play my game, you would need 10 PlayStations and 10 televisions and 40 controllers, and each controller is like $50. So you have a really, really expensive, confusing classroom. And I did that specifically because I wanted to focus on a game. This was a game. It's a game that supports learning of fractions, but the game part was really important to me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But suffice it to say, well, so how many people here play games, video games or board games or card games? Okay. How many people here have been playing one of those games and felt incredibly frustrated and done what is called rage quitting, and then gotten back and tried it again and succeeded? Okay. So there's something about games, well-designed games, that make us so angry, but then so willing to go back and try over and over and over again. And I wanted that in my fractions game. So I said, okay, I'm going to put it on a platform that can never really be used in classrooms. The name of my game is called Rollies Adventure. There's a narrative reason for this, so you'll see that in a moment. I just talked about stuff a little bit ahead of time. Okay, how many people here have played Little Big Planet? 1, 2, or 3? Okay, all right. So for those of you who have played, this video will probably be like, all right, this is cool and interesting. For those of you who haven't played this or haven't spent a lot of time playing games or whatever, this may make no sense to you. So I'll explain it afterwards. Don't be alarmed. It's totally okay. Help! The evil wizard trapped me with puzzles I can't solve. Okay, that's Rolly. Because, you know, she rolls. The little avatar is me. Okay, so that's what happens when the player first logs in. Now, since I built this for in the wild play, so there's some things about this game that they don't get told in advance. And there's some things about this game that if you're not a Little Big Planet player, you won't understand. So for example, this hand symbol means grab this and something happens. So if you've played Little Big Planet and you've gotten to the point where you've unlocked playing other people's levels, you know what this symbol means. So these are just buttons, essentially. In addition, in education, we tend to often tell people what they're supposed to do before they start doing it, what the goal is, what the purpose is. A player logging into this game has no idea that it's about fractions. I do not tell them that it's about fractions at any point in the game, which means that as you watch this, you might be able to see fractions. I don't know whether or not the players at this stage of the game would actually see anything fractional about this. And another thing is, if you've played a well-designed game that doesn't tell you what to do, say Portal 1, you just sort of show up and you're just like, wow, okay, what is going on? But you know that you're supposed to test and play and run around, and you may die horrible deaths, but that's okay because you get to try again. My game was designed to be like that too. So the player runs in, they know these 3 buttons do something. When you grab them, they don't know what. And that's intentional. And that's totally bizarre for education. But it's totally normal for games. And so I'm going to play this video one more time. And just keep in mind, now that you know, it's about fractions. But I designed it specifically to be played by players who have no idea it's about fractions and could have a wide variety of experience with fractions. So maybe they've taken fractions classes. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't thought about fractions as fractions in many, many years other than balancing their checkbook, but that's really about decimals. Not many people convert 25 cents to a quarter. And let's see. Okay. Video again. Maybe. I also, in a moment, the character's going to move to the right and left. And you'll see this big blocky thing, and it's got the hand symbol and it says R2. That's because when I play this with the folks that I'm collecting data with or with my play testers, not all of them have played Little Big Planet before, so they wouldn't necessarily recognize these symbols. Do folks see anything fractional about this? Okay, some maybes-ish. Okay. What? Have a brave volunteer?
Before, when you were kind of by the 1, I don't know if you grabbed it, but it only had like half a block, and then you went over to 2 and it had 2 halves, which make the whole.
Okay. Did everyone hear that? Okay, excellent. And now I'm going to do that thing that my participants always think is really annoying, is I'm not going to say that was right or that was wrong. Math is in the eye of the beholder, like many conceptual levels of understanding, which means to you that is fractions. Other folks can see other things that seem fraction-like or think this entire game is not about fractions at all, and they would also be correct. I designed exactly for that type of reasoning, but that doesn't mean that that's the only correct one. So when I started designing this game back at the very, very beginning, I started with the question, what is a fraction? So the word fraction is often associated with visuals like this. These are not fractions. These are representations of fractions. And now I'm going to shift into my academic Uber speak for a moment and share my definition of fractions. So at their heart, the very root of the definition of fractions, a fraction is a relationship or multiplicative comparison between two quantities. So we use pizzas and monkeys and number lines to represent these quantities and their relationships, but there are many, many other ways of representations. And video games and digital media in general support these different representations and different interactions with those representations than wherever possible. But you have to start by re-envisioning them. You have to go back to the content and say, what is this really? If we take away all of the academic traditions, what is left? What is a fraction? So I decided to go with perceptual magnitudes of quantities, which means that I wanted a representation that was grounded just in what the player saw. So when we see a representation like this, actually, it's hard not to think of some sort of fractional relationship, because doubling and halving is a concept that's developed early on, usually going to formal school. So this sort of problem, you see something's half full. We can automatically fill it or empty it by halving and doubling. We can quarter it quite easily just using our perceptual systems. So each of these objects has possible quantities. So they have a height, they have a width, there's a certain color to it. So one such quantity here is magnitude, which is that they take up space in the world and they impinge upon our perceptual systems. So importantly, seeing quantities is separate from actual measurement. So you can see a quantity and act upon a quantity, even if you don't know how many inches or meters or whatever it is. So my re-envisioning of fractions for the game began with this. So this non-numeric perceptual quantities with these relationships that encourage thinking about halving and doubling. So this is the representation you just saw became transformed into this representation. So there's a clear part and a clear whole and a relationship that can be clearly perceived. Or as I said before, that's how I designed it. That's how some folks see it. But not everyone sees it that way, as I've learned from playtesting. So this sort of paradigm actually persists throughout the entire game. There's additional complications and nuances, but this is the very first step. And one of the things I wanted to make sure is that you can, okay? So I can walk up to one of these screens with a ruler, and I can measure the part in the whole. But the bonus is that games don't encourage that sort of breaking. The point of something like Little Big Planet is you sit on the couch, you have a controller, you're some distance from a large television. That's the ideal setup anyway. And so wandering to your desk, finding a ruler, and walking it to the television is sort of a violation of these expected game norms. And I wanted to make sure that I had that. So this also means that it doesn't immediately look like fractions. If you look at this, you may not think fraction, like that doesn't jump to you. Especially if you're used to this sort of fractions. But remember, these are just ways of representing these fractions. This is not what a fraction is at its very root. So one of the things I'm going to talk about today is feedback and the dreaded F word, failure. And so I'm going to start by showing you what sort of feedback players get as they go through this game. So if they solve the puzzle, as you've already seen, or that specific one, Rollie moves forward. If they don't, this is what happens. And I want you to focus on the hole where the gold thing is. Okay, setting someone on fire is totally normal in Little Big Planet. Do not try this in your classroom, but it's totally normal here. It's okay. In the hole in the ground, which is also the hole with a W, you can see that there's a single block. The player jumped on the 1 button and got a single block in return. So that is the visual feedback that I gave them that helps them when they come back to life and reapproach this puzzle. They know more about what to do next. I also, as I said, want to mention a word that's used frequently in games. It's only whispered in schools. This is because failure in games and in school are completely different. So failure in this context, in Little Big Planet, is not a bad thing. You can try as long as you want. There's also an expectation that within this game environment, the structures necessary to succeed are there. This is one of the perks. A well-designed game, you can succeed. There are edge cases, but I'm going to ignore those because there aren't many of them. So the structures are there, you just have to find them, and you can move forward, no matter how many times you catch on fire. So, and unlike schools and classrooms, This is voluntary, and failing at it doesn't result in a bad grade. Your teachers don't get paid less. You don't get held back a class. There are no high stakes here. So this doesn't mean that well-designed games are easy, though. So you've just seen the intro part of my game. That's the easiest part. So anyone who picks up the game can hopefully play from there. It gets far more complicated. So in a later puzzle, it looks like this, and I'm sorry, that's really dark. And this puzzle I intentionally designed to be really irritating. So you can see the gold block there. Now it's sort of hard, like you can't just double it and fill the hole. It's sort of hard to see that. Instead, you have to actually count the texture that's in the hole or the wall. And then the buttons have way too many dots on them. You have to actually count them. So there's a word for looking at objects and immediately knowing how many they are. It's called subitizing, and you can only tend to do it for very small numbers. So when I only had 1 or 2 or 3 circles up there, people could just subitize. They immediately knew what number that was. Now, you have to actively count them. So this is irritating. So there's the first puzzle, super obvious. But here, with this irritating nature, I did that because James Paul G is a game scholar, and Harrell is a math educator. And both of them actually suggest doing something like this when you're designing games or when you're designing math learning curriculum or problems. So Harrell says that we should design math problems that make students want more math knowledge, to make them want to learn what it is that you're trying to teach them. This is called the necessity principle. And so this super, super irritating nature means that when you hit the next level, which is also super dark, suddenly, though, you have numerical labels. So the buttons are labeled with fraction notation and whole numbers. And right next to that arrow up there is supposed to be a 1/6. So that you can see that that little white line at the very bottom, the little fraction block, is 1/6 of the whole. So suddenly you have these numbers. You no longer have to try to force your perceptual system to figure it out. You no longer have to develop alternative strategies for counting. You've been given the tool that you want. And so James Paul G calls this just-in-time information. So just when you start to need something in a game, the game provides it. This is really, really dark. But there are 2 more on top of so like Rolly is being blocked by 2 of those fraction blocks. Anybody brave enough to wager a guess as to what button? Okay, we got a call for 1. How many people agree with that? Okay, who doesn't? We got an agreement? Okay, 2, 3, 4. Does anyone think something different? Okay, so it would actually take me a minute to find a video that shows you what would happen. But if you actually hit the 1 button, and I found with playtesting, that is the choice that everybody makes the first time. You'd get exactly the same thing, and then you'd die. So with that information, what would you do? Would you go to 1 1/4? Would you go to 3/4? Would you go further down?
3/4.
Why 3/4?
Because you have 8 total, and if one's going to drop 8, you're going to want it to drop 6. So.
Absolutely. And here's why I don't tell people this is about fractions. What you have right there is actually can be simplified to 4/3. 4/3 times what equals 1? We all know this one, 3/4. So it becomes quite easy as soon as you see the mathematical structure behind it. And I want to say, I showed this to audiences specifically to say, this game may look easy. A lot of the gameplay I've showed you is quite easy because it's about halves and doubling. It is not easy. It is not trivial. I have had a variety of incredibly high-credentialed people playing this game together and arguing, and then retired math educators with multiple PhDs pumping their fists in the air when they get it right. And I'm just like, yes, okay, I designed this properly. This is my forthcoming book. I'm hoping it'll come out in the fall. The whole, finishing a dissertation and getting a job thing sort of paused it for a second. But we are presenting a symposium at the Games Learning and Society conference this summer. So if you come to that, you should come to this talk. A lot of them will be there. I want you all to play my game. So this is the information. My email will be at the very end of this, so I'm happy to send it to you again. I want you to remember through the rest of this talk and for the rest of the days, just remember, you're a designer. Hold that in your heart. You can do that. And designing is a way to relook at everything in your world. I want to put some thanks for my hair. But most importantly, thanks to the designers of this conference. It's been going off without a hitch now, and I know this is a very hard thing to pull off. This is going to be my information, and we're going to switch it to the PS3. I think there's a button. You don't have to clap. This is, you can clap after we play. If you feel like it, it is not required. It's a little big planet. You get sweet costumes. You can also build them yourself. This is not my account, so okay. I think we have a crowd favorite. So this is called a poppet. Everything that you have is in the poppet. And we'll see a little bit more about that in a second. Come on, get down from there. I don't know what's happening. Yeah? I'm really discombobulated in terms of like, where am I? There we go. So this is what you get at the very beginning. A huge blank space. Your poppet now has many other things in it, including logic. Logic, materials, and essentially stickers. Let's start by not undoing the poppet. Wow, that's really dark. Okay. No, not that one. Whoa. Okay, now I can see a little bit of light. That's way too dark, right? Yeah. Okay.
The lighting too, if you want. The actual room lighting.
The room lighting? Yeah, because it looks like it's maxed out up here.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you all to be thinking about something that I can build. Building is not super fast, but I can build simple things. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. So now we have a background. Does anyone have a request for building something? What a cow. Okay, Connor, you better have the cow. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. I'll use the duck if I have to. So these are objects that you can share, community-built objects, but these are the ones that are provided, and you achieve them by playing a lot. Creatures. I do not see a cow. Ooh, dangerous creatures. There's a cow in there. Maybe. All right. Okay, we're going to go with flamingo. Floating flamingo. So right now the game's on pause. I'm going to unpause it, which means that things will act naturally, as they will when I publish it. Say, gravity. Gravity now works. Annoying sounds often also happen. So I'm going to... Now let's see what happens. Okay. That's not super exciting. I was hoping the really high gravity would make it bounce faster, but apparently that's not going to happen. Okay, now my favorite part, explode. So, these rotate things. They can hook it up to a joystick or etc. These are sensors, so you can set it up so that when a player gets near, something happens. You can set it up so when a player and a bunch of little robots get close enough, something happens. There are paintinators because, of course, there are paint guns. There's simple logic, so if you know anything about AND or XOR gates, that's all in here. There's advanced logic. These don't necessarily have parallels in the engineering world. Now, this is a destroyer. So I don't really want it. There we go. Okay. Sorry, that's a habit because I've been building for so long. I was like, save. It's like when you're working on one of those 10-page papers. Like, if I lose this, it's going to be awful. Okay, it's exactly what it's like. So let's say we do a player sensor. Yeah, okay. That will attach to the same thing. Usually I have more objects. So all of those things you see in the background there, they don't really exist in this digital space. They're just pretty. But I can't actually stick things to them. So this player sensor, this is the output of the player sensor. So when it senses a player, it activates something. We're going to put it at its input. And then we're also going to adjust the range. So we're going to set it up to explode pretty quickly when I start running over, because I think swimming in this is going to be kind of a pain. You can also do crazy things where, like, if there are multiple players, all of them need to be there before an explosion occurs. When you die, you respawn at certain respawn points, so you can set it up to detect unspawned players, which I think pretty much just ends up with, like, if you're going to explode somebody, set up something like that, then when they die, before they even respawn, the place catches on fire again, so they probably die when they spawn. So it could be a vicious cycle. Oh, hey, this is one of my favorite things. See the smiles? Yay! Okay. You can also make him really, really sad. Oh. And then there's the, like, quizzical face, which is, I don't know what's going on. And then there's angry. So, I usually keep him on the super happy level. Hello, gigantic flamingo. Are you going to explode? Oh, you're not going to explode. Why aren't you going to explode? This is a natural part of the design process. Lack of explosion troubleshooting. You laugh, but man, this happened a lot in my game. So let's see if I made it be on the same layer. Says no. So the layer, there's 3 layers. There's actually sort of 3.5, but we're going to ignore the half. So there's a back layer, there's a middle layer, and then there's a front layer. That's all you get, which means it's really designed to be a side scroller. But it means that you can set it up so that explosions only happen on the same layer. We don't have that, though. Require all players. Guess we'll go with lead, but I'm the only person, so... No. Okay. I thought I did, because I got the wire. But we shall see. Okay. Why are you not my friend? Okay, you know what? I'm going to do this instead. We're going to stick with... so these are basic materials. I'm going to use dark matter, because dark matter stays exactly where you placed it, so it doesn't pay any attention to gravity. And we're going to put it, like, here. I have no idea why the player sensor isn't working. So we're going to do this and see if that makes a difference. That's a pretty gigantic thingy. This should work. If it doesn't, then maybe it's because it's not a cow. That can be. Come on, little alien. You can do it. Hello. Yeah, so it should have exploded years ago. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna put a gigantic block, and we're gonna put the explodey thing on that, just to make sure that the, like, explodey thing's working. So maybe a flamingo's non-explodable. Have you ever tried to explode a flamingo before? Me either. Okay. So since this is a pre-built object by the Little Big Planet folks, sometimes rules don't always apply. And like playing every game, you often don't get a manual. So there are a bunch of really like beautiful, thriving communities, but they don't write down all of the things that they think should be obvious if you're a noob. So you have to find out a lot of things. Maybe I should make them a little closer so we don't have to. Hey, look. That's where I put the block, right? Okay. There is no block anymore. So the explosion worked. Okay. So we have one part of it. But we didn't see it. That part sucks. All right. So, just to make this a little more fun for everybody, I'm going to have a surprise happen too. Okay. So, see, 3 layers. Floaty box now close enough that hopefully, hey, you get back here. There we are. What do you know? Cardboard stays where it's put too. Okay. So this is the respawn point, or in this case, it's the. I pressed the button. What? What? Wait, no. Cancel it down. Okay. Okay, we want to see an explosion. There we go. We would like this to happen. Yeah, getting closer. That hissing sound is the glue sound, which means that, okay, we're all in this little lifeboat raft together. Awesome. Yes, this is very important. Actually going to be a bit of a jerk. This is one of the perks. It's like, even when the little big, or the sack girl explodes or dies, it still looks really cute. It doesn't look like it hurts that much. So, we're going to have a look. It's okay, I'm going to make it go away. For a second, at least. I also am going to say I'm not watching the time at all, so I have no idea how much time I have left. Okay. So I actually intended that to happen, and I have to say, it sucks when you don't intend that to happen, and it's what happens. You're just being like, I keep dying, make it stop. Okay. So what I did is I took an object that had danger tweaker to it. So you have choices. It could have been a plasma death, or like you saw on fire. That was electricity. I really, really enjoy electrified spikes. That's one of the best ways to make them go. I actually have no idea. I've been working with just fire in my fraction stuff. It's a hard habit to break. Okay. I'm guessing that, I don't know, this might be wrong. This might have come from the, do you have the Metal Gear Solid DLC? Yeah, this might have come from the Metal Gear Solid. Does anyone play that series? Few people out there? Okay. That stuff is amazing. So, I wonder if I can do Tidal Wave. I don't know. Okay, so I completely failed at finding a cow. Oh, I think I must have built one last time. So, let me show you a thing that's really, really brilliant. Let's just take... Oh, there we go. Ooh. I know, this looks silly. But just wait, it's going to be less silly at least. Maybe this one. Ha. now we have a cow face. So you can take any sticker and end up with an object that looks exact, that is perfectly tailored to that. So I could, in fact, build a cow and explode it, unless people have other suggestions. How many votes for explode the cow? Wow. Okay. Yes. Man, Wisconsinites and their cows. So, I feel kind of bad for that flamingo. Like, I tried to kill it and then just left it there lonely. It's not very nice. So, I actually usually build platforms using wood. So if I were to use basic glass, it means if I tried to run across it, I'd slide. So, like, it's actually pretty adorable because it's like the little sad girl trying to get along. It's not working. Okay, I don't know what this is. I don't have this one. What? Okay. I apparently have not played enough to earn that one. That's really irritating. So the drawback here is that if I undo... Okay, well, unrun the pause, close the pocket, wood's being a pain in the butt, I can actually rewind so that that unhappens. And then you can lock pretty much anything into space with dark matter. So this is what I tend to do. You can actually make it invisible, like nails. So this time we'll have a different one, unlike that. Okay, so we have the first part of a cow. There's also a bunch of, you can have voices speak. They don't actually say words, it's just a string of like different types of gobbledygook, but you can put text there. So we can make this cow say moo, if that becomes really important. Let's see if we can find the cow body sticker. Okay, I see an udder. That's important. So, whoa, gorilla. Okay. Oh, these look awesome. Okay, we're gonna... Yeah, it does. It's supposed to be a lizard body, but I don't really understand. Okay, you know what? We're gonna make it a spiky cow. It's gonna be a cow dragon.
I've been up for the next session.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you...
No, I did that earlier just because I didn't think there'd be time. Give me 1 second to put this cow monster together. Okay, so we are running out of time, so I'm not going to put a tail on, but you could totally do fire breathing. It is totally sweet. Hey, where'd my sticker go? You little jerk. Okay. Here. There. Okay, we are out of time, but I believe I'm hanging out somewhere and talking, so. You also have a really cool level now.
So, all right, real quick, I'm just going to do some housekeeping stuff. So, yeah, to start out, my name is Caro Williams. I'm an elementary education major, minor in science. So, I'm also the president of the student org EDIT, which stands for Education, Innovation, Technology. If you guys like what you saw here and you want to learn a little bit more, we meet on Thursday nights. You can Facebook us, you can tweet us at UWW, or you can send us an email at eduww@gmail.com. Thank you guys.